Witamy w kolejnym odcinku Goalline TV, powered by the Outlaws.
I'm John van Vliet, sitting in for Krzysztof Krzemień
I Chris Jasiak. Sezon zasadniczy PLFA 2 już się skończył w minionym weekendzie meczem Oleśnica Outlaws i Wrocław Panthers. Za tydzień mamy playoffy, które się rozpoczynają. Już wszystkie drużyny są Wam znane, ale serdecznie zapraszamy na stadion sztabowy o godzinie 16 w niedzielę, żeby obejrzeć mecz Wrocław Outlaws Kraków Tigers. Dzisiaj mamy ze sobą John van Vliet, który będzie z nami rozmawiał o NCAA NFL. Welcome back to the program, John.
Thanks for having me.
Let's start with the NCAA.
Okay.
Last weekend, a lot of good games. Anything catch your eye there?
Well, for me, I've had my eye on Michigan State at the start of the season. I thought they would be a really strong team going in, and I think the Big Ten is vastly improved in the past few seasons. They performed very strongly against Air Force, so I was not surprised to see that, but I'm glad to see them perform well, and a little bit surprised about Ohio State playing a little weak against Northern Illinois. Might be some decisions coming up for Urban Meyer as to who will start at quarterback, so that'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, that's 2 weeks in a row where Ohio State had kind of a letdown game. They didn't do too well against Hawaii and now Northern Illinois. Whereas Michigan State, there was a lot of discussion before about how they would handle the option offense at Air Force. Yeah?
Right. Yeah, and it is a tough offense to face. I have that from experience, but they were well prepared, and Michigan State's defense is always very strong in my opinion. So.
Yep, always a good team. Alabama loses to Ole Miss, second year in a row. What do you think of that?
Great for Ole Miss, great for the SEC. It makes the race for the SEC championship all the more interesting again. Hope to see Ole Miss continue on this upward path, but I don't think Alabama will be out of the picture this season. They'll bounce back strong, especially with Nick Saban as their coach.
Yeah, he's a good coach. And the second big upset of the week, Stanford over USC. Stanford, after a totally lackluster performance against Northwestern, comes back out of nowhere and beats USC.
Right, yeah. Stanford seems to have the recipe to know how to beat USC. They've done it a couple times in the past seasons. And yeah, USC started out the game strong, I thought, but then just some mistakes, and Stanford were able to put things together and come out with the win.
Yep. Our teams have to mention them. Arizona 77-13 over NAU. Notre Dame played a really good game against Georgia Tech. I don't know if you watched it, but Notre Dame was up 30-7. There were also questions, would Notre Dame's defense be able to handle the option offense of Georgia Tech? Effectively shut them down. Questions onto the freshman quarterback. He had one interception, but that was on the receiver more than it was on him. You know, they won 30-22, but the last 2 touchdowns Georgia Tech scored was in garbage time when it was all decided.
Yeah, in regards to Notre Dame, despite all the injuries that they have, they're a very, very strong team, so I think their roster is well capable to handle the injuries that they have.
Yep. Idaho State had a tough game.
Very tough game. They went up north to visit Boise State, and defensively they started out the game pretty well, but then Boise State were able to put 28 points in the third quarter and shut them out 52-0.
That's a tough loss, but Boise State's a good team.
They are.
So now in your mix of the top 4 for the championship series, who do you see? I know it's an early season. I know we're only in week 3, but who's your top 4 for right now?
Top 4, I might have to just agree with the AP polls. I think Ohio State deserves the number 1 spot, given that
until they lose it.
Until they lose it, of course, given that they're the defending champs. Michigan State is kind of my favorite for this year. They're performing pretty well. TCU is in there, and then
you don't like Ole Miss?
Ole Miss? No, I do. One good game against Alabama, of course, is great. I mean, the SEC, anything can happen.
Yeah, I agree with your top four. It's early, but I agree with them as well. TCU, Michigan State, Ohio State, and Ole Miss. I think that's the top four for right now. Alabama's loss this early in the season could really turn out to be meaningless because they might be back in the top four.
Right.
I think we have two dark horses which may be coming up. LSU,
Yes,
who got a
good point.
first place vote, yeah. And I'm going to say Notre Dame.
Of course, yeah.
And now on to the NFL.
Yeah, very interesting week in the NFL. Started out with the Thursday night game with Kansas City and the Denver Broncos. Very good matchup, I thought. And Kansas City is always a team that's on the edge of really making a good push towards the playoffs. And I think this year they have a good chance. Unfortunately, this time around with the Denver Broncos,
They didn't make it.
they coughed it up, literally. Jamal Charles, late fumble to be returned for a touchdown, sealing the victory for Denver. Despite having a few drives before, Jamal Charles ran him down to an end zone, or to a touchdown. But Peyton Manning is Peyton Manning, and can drive him to another score.
Big news, especially for me and you, the Tony Romo injury.
That's right.
Dallas is without Des Bryant, and now Tony Romo out for 8 weeks.
Des Bryant was one loss you hate to see, but now Tony Romo is a loss that we've gotten used to, unfortunately. It's always a risk with his age and
Not again.
yeah. But I was very thankful for Whedon to come in, and I think he was perfect, relieving for Romo. And the offense was struggling against a strong Philadelphia defense. It was very much a defensive matchup against the Eagles yesterday. But they played well, overcame penalties, overcame miscues on offense. So it was good to see.
What other games caught your eye there?
Well, of course, everyone's interested in how Marcus Mariota and Jameis Winston will play, given that they were the top two quarterbacks taken, both former Heisman Trophy winners. So I was interested to see how they would perform in week 2. And it seems there was a bit of role reversal for them. Marcus Mariota struggled a bit in his match against Cleveland, against Johnny Manziel.
Yeah, another Heisman winner.
Yeah. And then Jameis Winston looked very good in their win.
Yeah, we were talking about that last week, how Jameis Winston threw the first pass for a pick 6. Last quarterback to do that was 26 years ago, Brett Favre, yeah? And that means nothing, because look at the career Favre had. And what does Jameis Winston do? Turns it around the next week.
Yeah, but just like in our discussion with NCAA football, early season, a lot of things can happen, but it's encouraging and fun to see two highly touted quarterbacks perform well at different stages. So I think it's good for the NFL.
And Seattle's 0-2. Is that a problem for them?
No, I think with their experience, with their head coach, it won't be a problem. However, they are in a tough conference. Arizona Cardinals look really good. St. Louis Rams are always a tough team to play. 49ers may be in a rebuilding stage a bit, but
they have talent.
they do.
And their guys got out of jail.
That helps. So they're in a very tough conference, but I think with the leadership that they have, namely Russell Wilson, Richard Sherman, they'll pull things around.
Yeah, they kind of remind me of another very strong NFC team, Dallas in '94.
Yeah.
After they beat Buffalo, and then they came back the next season, lost their first 2 games because Emmitt Smith was holding out, and then ended up going 12-4 and beating the Buffalo Bills in the Super Bowl anyway.
Yeah, I think what Pete Carroll has built in Seattle is built to last. So this isn't anything for them to beat.
Tu już wszystko w dzisiejszym odcinku. Przekazujemy zaraz głos do Krzysztofa Krzemienia. Pamiętajcie, lajkujcie, subskrybujcie, wysyłajcie e-maile, oglądajcie, polecajcie nas swoim znajomym i przede wszystkim bądźcie w niedzielę o 16 na Sztabowej we Wrocławiu, żeby obejrzeć ćwierćfinałowy mecz Wrocław Outlaws Kraków Tigers. Do zobaczenia.
Dobranoc.
Cześć, witam Was wszystkich. Sezon zasadniczy PLFA 2 dobiegł końca, więc nowego power rankingu nie będzie. Tak więc wracamy do analiz przy tablicy. Dzisiaj coś z NFL, ruszył sezon najlepszej ligi świata. Zaczynamy od Patriots, od lat jednej z najbardziej kreatywnych drużyn w Stanach. Patriots w zasadzie co roku pokazują coś nowego w ofensywie, jakąś formację, jakąś zagrywkę, której wcześniej nie widzieliśmy. I w tym roku czymś takim jest formacja z 4 tight endami, którą tutaj rozrysowałem na tablicy. Patriots stosują ją tuż przy linii pola punktowego, tak bliżej niż 5 yardów od endzonu. Zastosowali ją zarówno w meczu otwarcia z Pittsburgh Steelers, jak i z Buffalo Bills w ostatnią niedzielę. Ta formacja z pozoru wygląda na typową formację biegową. 4 tight endów, z czego jeden pełni funkcję fullbacka, running back, to wszystko zebrane w swojej masie, Tom Brady za centrem. No i co robi defensywa w takiej sytuacji? Defensywa wysyła ciężką obronę z wielką ilością liniowych, linebackerów, którzy mają powstrzymać bieg. Co robią Patriots? Patriots tuż przed snapem zaczynają ruch. W tym konkretnym przypadku, który pochodzi z meczu z Buffalo Bills, Rob Gronkowski przeszedł na pozycję szeroką, Scott Chandler ustawił się nieco z boku, a Michael Omanawani uciekł zupełnie na prawe skrzydło. W tej sytuacji defensywa musiała zareagować. Stworzyło się potworne zamieszanie, mimo że Buffalo widzieli tę akcję na taśmie z meczu przeciwko Steelers i tutaj znalazło się 3 defensorów, tutaj wyizolowany Omanawani. Jak zobaczycie później, jest to dosyć istotne. Patriots postanowili zagrać w lewo. Chandler wszedł tutaj w środek, ustawił się do złapania podania. Gronkowski wykonał prosty bieg wzdłuż linii końcowej, dostał piłkę, touchdown, 7 punktów dla Patriots. Zobaczcie, jak to wyglądało na filmie. Patriots zagrali niemal tą samą akcję, a w zasadzie tą samą formację jeszcze 2 razy w trzeciej kwarcie, kiedy dotarli pod endzone Bills. Tym razem graczem, który był celem tej akcji, był Scott Chandler, który ustawił się tym razem tutaj na tej pozycji szerokiej i był wyizolowany 1 na 1 z defensive backiem, podczas gdy cała reszta stała tutaj z lewej strony. Brady posłał mu 2 piłki. Najpierw Chandler zagrał slanta, który odbił mu się o ręce i uciekł gdzieś tam za linię końcową. Potem próbował uciekać do rogu, tam bardzo dobrze zachował się defensive back, który wybił Chandlerowi tą piłkę z rąk, więc punktów z tego nie było, ale warto zwrócić uwagę na to, jak wbrew pozorom wszechstronna jest taka nietypowa formacja z 4 tight endami. Zobaczcie, jak wyglądały zagrania do Chandlera. To już wszystko ode mnie. Dzięki za uwagę i zapraszam za tydzień na kolejne analizy.